Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished mucking out the last stall in the royal stables. The twin suns of Kepler 442b were setting, casting long shadows across the colony's central district. He had been working since dawn, tending to the mechanical horses that the nobility preferred over actual transportation pods. It was mindless work, but it paid enough to keep him fed and housed in the servants' quarters. The 17-year-old human had never known anything beyond this life. Born on this distant world to parents who died when he was young, he had been raised by the colony's charity system until he was old enough to work. The Kethanari, the reptilian species that governed this sector of space, had established this colony as a mining outpost 3 generations ago. Humans were allowed to live here, but only as laborers and servants. Marcus didn't mind the work most days. The mechanical horses were beautiful creatures, their chrome bodies gleaming with built-in energy cells that powered their graceful movements. They were status symbols for the Kethanari elite, who rode them through the colony streets to display their wealth and power. As he was closing the stable doors, a commotion erupted from the spaceport district. Sirens wailed across the colony, and emergency lights bathed everything in flashing red. Marcus had never heard these particular alarms before. They weren't the mining accident signals or the standard evacuation warnings he knew well. Through the stable windows he could see massive shapes descending from the darkening sky. At first he thought they were ships, but as they came closer, Marcus realized these weren't mechanical at all. They were alive. Dragons. Real dragons. Not the mythical creatures from old Earth stories, but the legendary Drakthul, ancient beings that were whispered about in the darkest corners of the galaxy. They were said to be extinct, wiped out in the Great Purge 1,000 years ago when the Galactic Council deemed them too dangerous to exist. Yet here they were, dozens of them, their massive wings blotting out the stars as they landed throughout the colony. Each one was easily the size of a cargo ship, their scales shifting colors like oil on water. Their eyes glowed with an inner fire that seemed to see through everything. The colony's defense systems activated automatically, but the energy weapons passed harmlessly through the dragons as if they were made of light and shadow, rather than flesh and bone. The Kethanari garrison rushed into the streets, their plasma rifles charging with high-pitched whines. Marcus knew he should run, should hide in the servants' quarters like all the other humans were probably doing. But something kept him frozen at the stable window, watching as the largest of the dragons landed directly in the colony's main square. This one was different from the others. Where they shimmered with dark colors, this one's scales held the deep blue-black of space itself, with points of light that looked like distant stars. It was clearly their leader, and when it opened its massive jaws, its voice resonated not through sound but directly into the minds of everyone in the colony. "We seek the one who tends to the false steeds," the voice said. "Ancient and patient. Bring him forward and no harm will come to this place." Marcus felt his knees go weak. They were talking about him. Somehow, impossibly, these legendary creatures were asking for a stable boy from a backwater mining colony. The Kethanari commander, a tall reptilian with silver scales marking his rank, stepped forward with his weapon raised. "This colony is under the protection of the Galactic Council. You have no authority here, Ancient Ones. Leave now or face the consequences." The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. "The Galactic Council. Yes, we remember them. They fear what they cannot control, just as you do now." The creature's star-filled gaze swept across the assembled crowd. "We will wait until dawn for the stable-keeper to present himself. If he does not come willingly, we will take him anyway, and your pretty little colony will burn." With that, the dragons settled into positions around the colony like a living siege wall. They didn't attack, didn't threaten anyone directly, but their presence was overwhelming. The very air seemed charged with ancient power. Marcus slumped against the stable wall, his mind racing. Why would dragons want him? He was nobody special, just an orphaned human who cleaned up after mechanical horses. He had no special skills, no hidden talents, no secret heritage that he knew of. His life had been completely ordinary. But as he looked out at the dragons, something strange happened. The nearest one, a smaller creature with silver-green scales, turned its massive head toward the stable. Its glowing eyes met his through the window, and Marcus felt a jolt of recognition, as if he was looking at something he had always known but never seen. The dragon's mental voice was gentler than its leader's, almost curious. You feel it too, don't you, young keeper? The connection that has always been there, waiting. Marcus pressed his hand against the window glass. I don't understand. What connection? The bond that your kind once shared with ours, before fear and politics drove us apart. You tend to mechanical beasts because your soul calls to something greater. You have always known that horses, even artificial ones, were just shadows of what you truly longed to care for. The young human thought about this. It was true that he had always felt drawn to creatures, had always been gentle with animals in a way that seemed to come naturally. Even the mechanical horses responded to him better than they did to their owners. He had assumed it was just because he spent more time with them. But why me? Marcus asked silently, somehow knowing the dragon would hear his thoughts. Because you are what your people were meant to be before they forgot. A bridge between worlds, a keeper of the ancient compact. Tomorrow you will have to choose. Remain here in safety or come with us and discover what you were truly born for. The dragon withdrew its attention, leaving Marcus alone with his tumultuous thoughts. Outside, he could hear the colony's leaders arguing in panicked voices, discussing evacuation plans and calling for reinforcements from the sector capital. Marcus knew that no reinforcements would come in time. The Drakthul had chosen their moment carefully. He also knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he would not let this colony burn because of him. He spent the long night walking among the mechanical horses, running his hands along their chrome flanks, wondering if this would be the last time he would ever see them. By morning, everything would change. Dawn broke over the colony with an eerie stillness. The dragons had not moved from their positions throughout the night, standing like ancient sentinels around the settlement. Marcus had barely slept, spending most of the dark hours pacing his small room and thinking about the impossible choice before him. As the first rays of sunlight touched the colony's buildings, the great dragon leader's voice once again filled everyone's minds. The time has come. Send forth the stable keeper, or face the consequences of defying the Drakthul. Marcus dressed in his cleanest work clothes and made his way through the empty corridors. Most of the colonists were hiding in their homes, afraid to venture outside. The few Kethnari soldiers he passed looked at him with a mixture of fear and anger, as if this was somehow his fault. In the main square, he found Colony Administrator Vextal arguing frantically with his advisors. The tall Kethnari's scales had turned a pale yellow, a sign of extreme stress in his species. We cannot simply hand over a colonial citizen to these creatures, Vextal was saying. The Galactic Council would have our heads, but if we don't comply, they'll destroy everything we've built here. Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding. Administrator Vextal, I'm here. The group turned to look at him, and Marcus saw a range of emotions cross their reptilian faces. Relief, guilt, and something that might have been pity. Boy, Vextal said, his voice strained. You don't have to do this. We can try to negotiate. Perhaps offer them something else they want. Marcus looked past the administrator to where the great dragon waited in the center of the square. Its star-filled eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. What do they want with me? I'm just a stable hand. One of the advisors, a female Kethnari with deep green scales, spoke up. We've been researching all night. The Drakthul were once bonded to certain bloodlines among various species. Humans were among those who shared this connection thousands of years ago. Perhaps you carry some genetic marker they recognize. That's impossible, Marcus protested. My parents were ordinary colonists. I don't have any special heritage. The dragon's mental voice interrupted their conversation, filled with what sounded almost like amusement. Bloodlines are not always what they seem, young keeper. Your people have forgotten much about their own history. Come forward and let us show you what you truly are. Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward the center of the square. With each step, the air around him seemed to thicken with energy. The mechanical horses in the nearby stables began to stir and whinny, their sensors detecting something their programming couldn't explain. When he reached the great dragon, Marcus had to crane his neck back to look into its face. Up close, the creature was even more magnificent and terrifying. Its scales seemed to contain entire galaxies swirling with colors that had no names. Kneel, the dragon commanded gently. Marcus dropped to one knee, unsure of what else to do. The dragon lowered its massive head until they were nearly touching, and Marcus could feel the heat radiating from its ancient form. What do you see when you look at me, stable keeper? Marcus studied the dragon's face, looking past his fear. Slowly, something shifted in his perception. The terrifying predator before him transformed into something else, still powerful, still ancient, but no longer threatening. I see someone who's been alone for a very long time. Someone who's been waiting. The dragon's eyes widened with what looked like surprise. In 3,000 years, you are the first to see past the surface. Yes, young one. We have been alone and we have been waiting for humans to remember what they once were. The creature straightened up and addressed the watching crowd. This one has the gift. He will come with us, not as a prisoner, but as a student. The compact between our species will be renewed. Wait, Marcus said, finding his voice. What compact? What are you talking about? Another dragon, the silver-green one from the night before, moved closer. Long ago, before your people spread across the stars, before they forgot their connection to the living world, humans and dragons were partners. Your kind were the bridge between the physical and the ethereal, the keepers of balance. We were the guardians of cosmic harmony. Together, we maintained peace across 100 worlds. Marcus felt a strange stirring in his chest, as if something long dormant was beginning to wake up. What happened to that partnership? The great dragon's mental voice grew sad. Fear, politics, the rise of technology over natural wisdom. Your people chose machines over magic, logic over intuition. They forgot their gift, and we went into exile rather than watch the universe tear itself apart. But the gift was never truly lost, the silver-green dragon added. It sleeps in certain bloodlines, waiting to be awakened. We sensed it in you from across the galaxy, the same resonance that your ancestors once carried. Marcus looked back at the colonists, watching from a safe distance. These people had raised him, given him work and shelter. How could he abandon them? If I go with you, what happens to the colony? Nothing, the great dragon replied. We have no quarrel with these people. They are merely living their lives as they understand them. But you, Stablekeeper, have a larger destiny. The galaxy is heading toward another great war, one that will make the conflicts of the past look like minor skirmishes. The old alliances are failing, and new threats are emerging from the dark spaces between stars. The silver-green dragon nodded gravely. The Drakthul alone cannot stop what's coming. We need the bridge builders again, the ones who can unite different species under a common cause. We need humans who remember their true nature. Marcus felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. I'm just one person. How can I possibly make a difference in a galactic war? Because one person with the right gifts can change the fate of billions, the great dragon said. Your ancestors proved this time and again. They could speak to any species, understand their deepest needs and fears, find common ground where others saw only differences. This is what we sensed in you, tending to those mechanical beasts with such care. The young human looked down at his hands, ordinary hands that had cleaned stalls and tended to artificial creatures. Could these same hands really hold the power to unite worlds? I need time to think, Marcus said finally. Time is what we do not have, the silver-green dragon replied urgently. Even now, the shadow fleets are gathering at the galaxy's edge. The first attacks will come within months. If we are to prepare, if we are to find and awaken others like you, we must begin immediately. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his simple life in the stables, about the peaceful routine of caring for the mechanical horses. Then he thought about the strange connection he had always felt to living things, the way animals seemed to trust him instinctively. Maybe the dragons were right. Maybe he had always been meant for something more than mucking out stalls. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly into the great dragon's star-filled gaze. If I come with you, I want something in return. The assembled dragons shifted with what sounded like surprise. No one had ever tried to negotiate with the Drakthul before. Most species either worshipped them or feared them too much to make demands. You would bargain with us, Stablekeeper? The great dragon asked, and Marcus couldn't tell if the ancient creature was amused or offended. I would make an agreement, Marcus corrected, standing up straighter. You say you need bridge builders, people who can unite different species. Well, start here. This colony has humans, Kethnari, and 3 other species all living together peacefully. If something threatens the galaxy, they'll need protection. The silver-green dragon tilted her head thoughtfully. What do you propose? Marcus gestured toward the watching colonists. Leave one of your kind here as a guardian, not as a ruler or conqueror, but as a protector. When this galactic war you're talking about begins, this colony should be defended. Administrator Vextal stepped forward nervously. Young Marcus, we appreciate your concern, but having a dragon permanently stationed here might cause complications with the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council, the great dragon said with obvious disdain, will have larger concerns very soon, but your stablekeeper makes a wise request. Very well. Silandra will remain here as protector of this colony. He indicated the silver-green dragon with a slight nod. The dragon called Silandra moved closer to the colonists, her movements graceful despite her massive size. When she spoke, her mental voice was warm and reassuring. I give my word that no harm will come to any who call this place home, so long as they welcome my presence. Vextal looked uncertain, but Marcus could see the calculation in the administrator's eyes. Having a dragon as a protector would certainly deter any raiders or hostile forces that might threaten the mining operation. We would be honored by your protection, Vextal said carefully. With that settled, Marcus turned back to the great dragon. There's one more thing. I want to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to. You talk about gifts and ancient compacts, but I need to know what that really means. The great dragon studied him for a long moment. Climb onto my back, stablekeeper. Some knowledge can only be shared through direct experience. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The dragon was easily 40 feet long and at least 15 feet tall at the shoulder. There were no stairs or ladders, just sheer scales and the dragon's implicit trust that he could manage. To his surprise, Silandra moved to his side and lowered herself to the ground. Use me as a stepping stone, she offered. This will be easier. With more courage than he felt, Marcus climbed onto Silandra's back, then made the precarious leap to the great dragon's massive shoulders. The creature's scales were warm to the touch and provided better grip than he had expected. Hold on, the great dragon advised, and then they were airborne. Marcus had never flown before. Space travel didn't count since passengers stayed in enclosed ships. This was entirely different. The wind rushed past his face as the colony fell away below them, becoming a small cluster of buildings surrounded by the vast mining operations that scarred the planet's surface. But as they climbed higher, something extraordinary happened. Marcus began to see the world differently. The mining scars weren't just ugly wounds in the earth. They were patterns of need and survival, stories of people trying to build lives on a harsh world. The colony wasn't just a random collection of buildings, it was a living organism, with flows of energy and activity that pulsed like a heartbeat. Do you see it? The great dragon asked. I see. Connections, Marcus replied, amazed. Everything is connected to everything else. This is the first gift of the bridge builders, the dragon explained, as they soared through the clouds. The ability to see the web that connects all living things, all communities, all worlds. Your ancestors used this sight to understand different species, to find common ground between natural enemies. As they flew, Marcus began to see more. The mechanical horses in the colony weren't separate from nature. They were an attempt to recreate the bond between humans and living creatures. The Kethanari colonists weren't conquerors. They were explorers trying to find their place in a vast universe, just like humans. It's overwhelming, Marcus admitted, closing his eyes against the flood of new perceptions. It takes time to learn control, the dragon said gently. Your ancestors trained for years to master these abilities. We will teach you, but first you must see what threatens us all. They climbed higher, breaking through the atmosphere into space itself. Marcus should have been gasping for air, should have been frozen by the vacuum, but somehow the dragon's presence protected him. They flew between the stars as easily as they had flown through the clouds. Look toward the galactic rim, the dragon instructed. Marcus followed the creature's mental direction and saw something that made his blood run cold. At the very edge of his perception, where the galaxy's spiral arms faded into darkness, there was something wrong. It wasn't quite visible, more like a shadow cast by an unseen object, but it radiated hunger and malevolence. What is that? Marcus whispered. The Devourers, the great dragon replied grimly. They come from the void between galaxies, consuming worlds and leaving nothing behind. They have already destroyed 3 smaller galaxies, and now they turn their attention to ours. The shadow seemed to pulse with alien intelligence, and Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. How do you fight something like that? Not with weapons or technology alone, the dragon said. The Devourers feed on chaos, on division and fear. The only way to defeat them is through unity, getting every species in the galaxy to work together despite their differences. This is why we need the bridge builders again. They began their descent back toward the planet's surface. As the colony grew larger below them, Marcus thought about what he had seen and felt. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but there was something else too. A sense of rightness, as if this was what he had always been meant to do. "There are others like me?" Marcus asked. "Scattered across the galaxy, most not even knowing what they are," the dragon confirmed. "Finding them, awakening their gifts, teaching them to work together. This will be your first mission. The Drakthul will provide transportation and knowledge, but the bridge building must be done by humans. We learned long ago that our presence can intimidate other species. They trust your kind more readily." As they landed back in the colony square, Marcus felt fundamentally changed. The simple stable boy was gone, replaced by someone who could see the deep connections that bound all life together. "When do we leave?" he asked. The great dragon's satisfaction was almost tangible. "Immediately. We have already located 3 other potential bridge builders. One is an engineer on a research station, another is a teacher on Earth's moon colony, and the third is a prisoner in a Galactic Council detention facility." Marcus looked around at the colony one last time, memorizing the faces of the people who had raised him. Then he climbed back onto the great dragon's shoulders, ready to begin a journey that would take him across the galaxy and change the fate of billions. The journey to their first destination took 3 days through space that defied Marcus's understanding of physics. The great dragon, who had finally introduced himself as Kethamor the Starweaver, moved between dimensions as easily as flying through air. They traveled through corridors of twisted spacetime where stars looked like streaks of light and time itself seemed fluid. Marcus spent most of the journey learning to control his new perceptions. Without warning, he would suddenly see the emotional connections between crew members on distant ships, or feel the collective fear of a planet's population facing some crisis. Kethamor taught him meditation techniques to filter these sensations. The bridge builders of old took years to master these abilities, the ancient dragon explained as they rested in a pocket dimension between stars. "You are learning in days what should take months. The urgency of our situation forces this acceleration, but be careful not to lose yourself in the cosmic web." Their first stop was Research Station Omega-7, a massive facility orbiting a dying star. The station was conducting experiments in stellar engineering, trying to extend the life of suns throughout the galaxy. It was ambitious work, but Marcus could sense the stress and division among the research teams. "Our target is Dr. Sarah Chen," Kethamor explained as they approached the station. "She leads the biological integration department. Her official job is studying how organic life can interface with stellar engineering technology. But her real gift is far greater." Marcus watched through the viewing portal as the research station grew larger. It was a beautiful structure, all flowing lines and integrated systems that looked more grown than built. "What makes you think she's like me?" "She has been unconsciously using bridge builder abilities for years," Kethamor replied. "Her success rate in getting different species to work together on projects is unprecedented. She thinks it's just good management skills, but she's actually reading and responding to the emotional needs of her teams." They docked at a secondary bay to avoid attracting too much attention. Kethamor shifted his form, condensing his massive dragon shape into something that looked like an exotic humanoid in environmental armor. It was still clearly not human, but it wouldn't cause immediate panic. The station's corridors buzzed with activity. Marcus saw humans working alongside insectoid Zeph-Hi, crystalline Silthuri, and several other species he didn't recognize. What struck him most was how smoothly they all worked together. There was none of the tension or mistrust he had seen on other multi-species installations. They found Dr. Chen in her laboratory, a spacious area filled with holographic displays, showing stellar structures and biological diagrams. She was a woman in her 30s with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a lab coat covered in notes and equations written in multiple languages. "Dr. Chen?" Marcus approached carefully. "I'm Marcus, and this is Kethamor. We need to speak with you about your work." She looked up from her displays, and Marcus immediately felt the bridge builder gift in her, a warm, empathetic presence that automatically assessed the emotional state of anyone nearby. "I'm sorry, but I don't have appointments scheduled. If this is about the project proposals, you'll need to go through administrative channels." "This isn't about your official work," Kethamor said, his disguised form radiating ancient authority. This is about abilities you possess but don't understand. Abilities that could save the galaxy. Dr. Chen's eyes narrowed with skepticism, but Marcus could sense her curiosity as well. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in mystical abilities or galactic saviors. If you have something to say, make it scientific. Marcus stepped forward. What if I told you that your success in managing multi-species teams isn't just good leadership? What if you're unconsciously reading and responding to the emotional and psychological needs of different species in ways that shouldn't be possible? That's ridiculous, Dr. Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. I just pay attention to body language and cultural cues. Really? Marcus concentrated on his newly awakened abilities, focusing on the connections he could sense between Dr. Chen and her research team. Then how do you explain the fact that you instinctively know when researcher Vexhai is feeling homesick for his hive world, even though Zephai don't show emotion in ways humans can normally read? Or why you always assign projects to Dr. Silthera when she's experiencing crystal growth cycles that make her more creative, even though you have no way of knowing about Silthuri biological rhythms? Dr. Chen stared at him, her face pale. How did you? I've never told anyone about those observations. I thought I was just being intuitive. You are being intuitive, Marcus said gently, but your intuition goes far deeper than you realize. Show me your current project. Still looking shaken, Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing a complex stellar engineering project. We're trying to stabilize a dying star system. The technology exists, but we need perfect coordination between 12 different species expertise. Everyone says it's impossible. The cultural and communication barriers are too great. Marcus studied the display, letting his bridge builder perception expand. He could see not just the technical challenges, but the web of relationships and conflicts between the various team members. The Grextari delegation feels like their contribution isn't being valued because they communicate primarily through scent markers that the other species ignore. The Silthuri team is frustrated because their crystalline thinking processes work in cycles, but the project timeline assumes linear progress. Dr. Chen's mouth fell open. That's exactly right. But there's no way you could know that from just looking at a technical display. Kethmore dropped his humanoid disguise, revealing his true dragon form in the spacious laboratory. Several pieces of equipment sparked from the sudden energy discharge, but he was careful not to cause damage. Because he has the same gift you do, Dr. Chen, the ability to see the connections between all living beings. Dr. Chen stumbled backward, her scientific worldview crashing around her. You're a Dracthal. They're supposed to be extinct. Rumors of our demise were greatly exaggerated, Kethmore said with what might have been humor. We withdrew from galactic affairs because the younger races feared us. But now a greater threat approaches, one that will destroy everything unless the species of this galaxy can unite. Marcus moved to Dr. Chen's side, offering support as she processed this revelation. I know it's overwhelming. 3 days ago, I was just a stable hand who thought mechanical horses were as exotic as my life would get. But this gift we have, it's real, and it's needed. Dr. Chen looked between Marcus and the dragon, her scientific mind struggling to accept what she was seeing. Even if I believe you, what could I possibly do against a galactic threat? I'm just a researcher. You're a bridge builder, Marcus said. You've already proven that you can get different species to work together on impossible projects. We need that skill on a much larger scale. He gestured to the stellar engineering display. This project of yours, it's not just about saving one star system. It's a test case for the kind of cooperation we'll need to survive what's coming. Through the laboratory's windows, they could see the dying star that the research station orbited. Its light was growing dimmer and redder as its fuel ran low. In a few months, it would go nova and destroy 3 inhabited worlds in the system. The Devourers feed on chaos and division, Kethmore explained. Every world that destroys itself through conflict, every alliance that breaks down through mistrust, it weakens the galaxy's ability to resist. But every successful cooperation, every bridge built between species, makes us stronger. Dr. Chen stared at the dying star, then at her project display showing the fragmented teams trying to save it. Marcus could sense the moment when her perspective shifted, when she began to see her work not as just another research project but as part of something infinitely larger. If I agree to help, she said slowly, what exactly would that involve? Marcus smiled, remembering asking the same question just days ago. First, we save this star system by getting your teams to work together properly. Then we find others like us and teach them to use their gifts. And eventually, we unite the galaxy against something that wants to devour us all. Dr. Sarah Chen agreed to help, but only after they proved the bridge builder abilities could actually work. She insisted on treating it as a scientific experiment, which Marcus found both amusing and admirable. Within hours, she had her stellar engineering project running more smoothly than it had in months. The key was understanding what each species truly needed, not just what they said they needed. The Grextari weren't just being difficult about communication. Their scent-based language contained crucial chemical data about stellar composition that the other teams had been missing. The Silthuri thinking cycles weren't inefficiency. They were processing information in ways that revealed patterns others couldn't see. "It's remarkable," Dr. Chen said, as they watched the integrated teams work together on the dying star's restoration. "I always thought I was just being a good manager, but this is something else entirely." Marcus nodded, feeling the satisfaction of the various team members through his bridge builder perception. "It's what humans were meant to do, according to Kethmore. We're natural mediators, able to understand different species better than they understand each other." Their next destination was Luna City, humanity's oldest off-world colony. The Great Dragon had identified their second recruit as Elena Vasquez, an elementary school teacher who worked in the colony's multi-species education district. Getting there required another journey through twisted spacetime, but Marcus was beginning to adjust to the disorienting experience. Luna City sprawled across the moon's surface under a massive atmospheric dome. The sight of Earth hanging in the black sky above was breathtaking, but Marcus found himself more interested in the complex social structures below. The city housed not just humans, but refugees and immigrants from dozens of species, all trying to build new lives together. Elena Vasquez taught at Integration Elementary, a school designed to educate children from different species together. Her classroom was a chaos of young beings, human children playing alongside Kethanari hatchlings, HFY larvae, and even a few young Silthuri, whose crystal bodies were still growing and forming. "Miss Elena," a young Kethanari called out as they entered the classroom. "Tommy said that my scales are ugly, but I told him that human skin is weird and pink." Elena, a woman in her 20s with warm brown eyes and an infinite supply of patience, knelt down between the two children. "Tommy, what makes someone beautiful?" The human boy, perhaps 6 years old, thought seriously about the question. Being nice?" "That's right. And Kethvar, your scales are beautiful because they show that you're healthy and strong. Tommy's skin is beautiful because it shows he's healthy too. We're all different on the outside, but we're all the same where it matters. In here." She pointed to her heart. Marcus watched in fascination as she spoke. Without realizing it, Elena was using bridge builder abilities to create emotional harmony in the classroom. The children calmed down, their species-specific stress responses easing as they felt her genuine care and acceptance. "Miss Vasquez?" Marcus approached after the children had been dismissed for recess. "Could we speak with you privately?" Elena looked at them curiously. Marcus had learned to recognize the bridge builder gift in others. There was something about Elena that immediately made him feel welcomed and understood, even though they were strangers. "Are you parents of one of my students?" Elena asked. "I don't remember scheduling any conferences today." "We're here about different kind of education," Dr. Chen said. She had insisted on coming along to see another bridge builder in action. "About abilities you have that you might not fully understand." Elena's expression grew cautious. "I'm just a teacher. I don't have any special abilities." Marcus looked around the empty classroom, seeing the artwork and projects from dozens of different species displayed together harmoniously. "How do you do it? How do you get children from completely different evolutionary backgrounds to work together so well?" I listen to them," Elena said simply. "Every child wants to be understood and accepted, regardless of what species they are. It's not that complicated." "But it is complicated," Dr. Chen interjected, her scientific mind engaged. "Different species have completely different social structures. different ways of showing affection or respect, different learning styles. What you're doing shouldn't work, but it does. Perfectly. Marcus decided to demonstrate rather than explain. He focused his bridge builder perception on Elena, seeing the gentle way she unconsciously responded to the emotional needs of everyone around her. You know when little Silthura needs quiet time because her crystal matrix is growing, even though Silthuri children don't show physical signs of discomfort. You know when the HFY larvae are feeling separated from their hive connection, even though they can't verbalize that feeling yet. Elena stared at him, her face growing pale. How do you know about those things? I've never told anyone about. I thought I was just imagining patterns. At that moment, Keithmore materialized in the classroom, his dragon form carefully sized to fit in the space without causing damage. Elena stumbled backward, her teacher instincts immediately assessing whether the children were in danger, even though the classroom was empty. Do not fear, Bridge Builder, Keithmore said gently. We come seeking your help, not to cause harm. Elena's shock gave way to professional curiosity. You're a Drakthul. I thought your species was extinct. I teach about the old legends in my history classes. The legends are true, Keithmore replied, as is the legend of the great partnership between dragons and humans. You demonstrate that partnership every day in this classroom, bringing together species that should be natural enemies. Marcus moved closer to Elena, offering the same reassurance he had needed just days ago. We have a gift, Elena. The ability to build bridges between different peoples, different species. The galaxy needs that gift now more than ever. Elena looked around her classroom, seeing it with new eyes. The children do seem to respond to me in ways that other teachers find unusual. The other faculty members always ask me for advice about managing multi-species groups. Because you understand something they don't, Dr. Chen explained. You can sense the emotional and social needs of different species intuitively. It's not just good teaching, it's a genetic ability that's been dormant in certain human bloodlines for thousands of years. Through the classroom windows they could see Earth hanging in the star-filled sky. It looked peaceful and beautiful, but Marcus knew that appearances were deceiving. The galaxy was heading toward a war that could destroy everything. There's something coming, Marcus said quietly. A threat from outside our galaxy that feeds on division and conflict. The only way to fight it is to unite every species in the galaxy, and that's going to require bridge builders like us. Elena sank into her desk chair, overwhelmed by the implications. I'm just a teacher. I work with children, not galactic politics. Children are the future, Keithmore observed. If you can teach young beings from different species to work together, to trust and understand each other, you're laying the foundation for the unity we'll need to survive. Marcus understood her hesitation. I felt the same way. I was just a stable boy taking care of mechanical horses on a backwater colony. But this gift we have, it's bigger than any one job or any one life. We have a responsibility to use it. Elena looked at a drawing on her desk made by one of her students, a crude but heartfelt picture showing children from different species holding hands around a representation of Luna City. If I agree to help, what happens to my students? They need stability, consistent care. They need a galaxy to grow up in, Dr. Chen said simply. Without our intervention, they might not have that chance. Elena studied the three faces before her, the former stable boy who now radiated quiet confidence, the scientist who had discovered a new way of seeing the universe, and the ancient dragon who carried the weight of cosmic wisdom. Finally, she nodded. Tell me what I need to do. Their team was growing, but they still had one more bridge builder to find. According to Keithmore, the third candidate was imprisoned in a maximum security Galactic Council detention facility, accused of sedition for organizing multi-species labor unions. Getting him out would require more than just persuasion. His name is Jacob Reeves, Keithmore explained as they prepared to leave Luna City. He was arrested for trying to unite mining workers from 12 different species against exploitative labor practices. The council considers him a dangerous radical. Marcus smiled grimly. Sounds like our kind of dangerous radical. The Galactic Council detention facility Sigma-9 was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, floating in the empty space between star systems. It was designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy, or at least those the Council considered dangerous to their version of order. Getting inside required careful planning. Kethmore couldn't simply blast through the defenses without risking the lives of innocent prisoners, and a direct assault would turn every government in the galaxy against them. Instead, they needed to be subtle. "I still think this is insane," Dr. Chen said as she reviewed their infiltration plan. They were gathered in the Dragon's extra-dimensional space, a pocket reality where physics worked according to Kethmore's will rather than normal laws. "We're about to break into the most secure prison in the galaxy to rescue someone we've never met." Elena, who had been quiet since leaving Luna City, looked up from the intelligence reports they had gathered on Jacob Reeves. "Look at his record. He's organized successful labor negotiations on 17 different worlds. Each time he got species that had been at each other's throats for generations to work together for common goals." Marcus studied the holographic display showing Jakob's various crimes when he's organizing strikes that crossed species lines, negotiating peace between rival mining companies, creating worker cooperatives that included beings as different as hive-minded insects and solitary crystalline entities. The Council calls him a seditious agitator, but his actual crime seems to be making people cooperate too well. "Exactly," Kethmore rumbled. "The Council fears anything that might upset the balance of power they've established. A human who can unite different species represents a threat to their control." Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Elena would pose as a teacher conducting research on rehabilitation programs, giving her legitimate access to the prison's education wing. Dr. Chen would act as her research assistant, while Marcus would use his growing abilities to map the emotional landscape of the facility and locate Jakob. Kethmore would remain hidden in his pocket dimension, ready to extract them if things went wrong. The prison was as grim as Marcus had expected, sterile corridors lined with energy barriers, the constant hum of suppression fields designed to prevent escapes. But what struck him most was the emotional atmosphere. The place radiated despair, anger, and resignation in ways that made his bridge builder senses ache. "How do they expect anyone to rehabilitate in a place like this?" Elena whispered as they walked through the main corridor. Her teacher's instincts were clearly disturbed by the oppressive environment. "They don't," Dr. Chen replied quietly. "This place isn't about rehabilitation. It's about removing problems from society." Marcus reached out with his abilities, feeling for the distinctive resonance of another bridge builder. Most of the prisoners radiated simple emotions: fear, anger, loneliness. But from somewhere in the high-security wing, he sensed something different. A presence that somehow remained calm and centered despite the circumstances. Someone who was actively trying to maintain hope and dignity in a place designed to crush both. "Found him," Marcus murmured. "High security wing, cell block 7. Getting to the high security wing required Elena to convince the warden that her research needed to include interviews with the most difficult prisoners. Her natural ability to understand and respond to people's needs served her well. Within an hour, she had the warden genuinely believing that her research could revolutionize prison management. Jacob Reeves was not what Marcus had expected. He was a man in his 40s with graying hair and calloused hands that spoke of years of manual labor, but his eyes held a depth of understanding that reminded Marcus of Kethmore, someone who had seen the connections between all living things and never forgotten them. "Visitors?" Jakob looked up from the book he was reading, a technical manual on interspecies communication protocols. "That's unusual. The Council generally prefers to pretend I don't exist." Elena sat down across from him, her natural warmth immediately filling the sterile interview room. "Mr. Reeves, I'm Elena Vasquez. I'm researching rehabilitation programs, but that's not really why we're here." Jacob studied their faces carefully. Marcus could sense the older man's bridge builder abilities at work, reading their intentions and emotional states with the skill of long practice. "You're not here about prison reform at all, are you? There's something different about you three, something familiar." Marcus leaned forward. "You feel it too, don't you? The connections between people, the ability to understand what different species really need even when they can't express it themselves?" Jakob's eyes widened slightly. "I thought I was the only one. I've been able to do it since I was young, but I never knew what to call it. It's why I could organize workers from different species. I could sense what they all had in common under their surface. Differences. Dr. Chen activated a small device that would scramble any surveillance equipment. Mr. Reeves, what we're about to tell you will sound impossible, but we need you to listen carefully. Over the next hour, they explained everything: the Drakthol, the bridge builder gift, the approaching threat from beyond the galaxy. Jacob listened without interruption, his experienced face growing more serious with each revelation. The Devourers, he said finally. I've heard whispers of something like that in the prison. Some of the alien inmates speak of darkness between stars, of worlds that simply vanish without explanation. Marcus felt a chill. You mean it's already started? According to the rumors, 3 systems on the galactic rim have gone completely dark in the past year. No distress signals, no survivors, just empty space where inhabited worlds used to be. Jacob stood and began pacing the small cell. The council is covering it up to prevent panic, but word gets around in a place like this. Elena looked horrified. If they're already attacking, how much time do we have? Not enough, Marcus said grimly. Kethmore estimated months, but if they're already hitting outer systems. Jacob interrupted their discussion. Before we go any further, I need to know, are you planning to break me out of here? That was the idea, Dr. Chen admitted. Your skills are needed to help unite the galaxy. Jacob smiled for the first time since they'd met him. Good, because I've been working on that from inside this prison for the past 2 years. Did you think I was just sitting here reading books? Marcus extended his bridge builder perception and was amazed by what he found. Jacob had been using his abilities to create connections between prisoners from dozens of different species. The usual violent rivalries that plagued multi-species prisons were almost non-existent in Sigma 9. Instead, there was a network of mutual support and cooperation that the guards attributed to good management, but was actually the result of Jacob's careful bridge building work. You've turned this entire prison into a functioning community, Elena breathed. The guards have no idea what you've actually accomplished. Prison populations are just another form of multi-species cooperation problem, Jacob said modestly. The principles are the same whether you're organizing minors or inmates. At that moment, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in flashing red, and Marcus could hear the heavy footsteps of security teams running through the halls. That's not good, Dr. Chen said, checking her surveillance scrambler. Someone's detected our equipment. Through the interview room's reinforced window, they could see chaos erupting in the prison corridors. But it wasn't a riot or an escape attempt, it was something far worse. The lights flickered and dimmed, and Marcus felt a familiar chill of cosmic horror. The Devourers, he whispered. They're here. Jacob pressed against the window, his face grim. Look at the security feeds. On the monitors throughout the facility, they could see the impossible. Shadows moving through space itself, darkness that devoured light and matter with equal hunger. The prison's defensive systems fired uselessly into the void as something vast and terrible approached. We need to get out of here, Elena said, her teacher's instincts focused on protecting her charges. All of us, everyone in this prison. Marcus reached out to Kethmore through their mental connection. We need an immediate extraction, and we're not leaving anyone behind. The dragon's reply came instantly. Understood. Prepare for emergency transition. Reality twisted around them as Kethmore's pocket dimension expanded to envelop the entire prison. In the space of a heartbeat, over 3,000 prisoners and guards found themselves transported to safety in a realm where ancient dragon magic could protect them from cosmic horrors. But as they watched through dimensional windows, the asteroid that had housed Sigma 9 simply ceased to exist, consumed by shadows that left nothing behind, not even debris. The Devourers had found them. The pocket dimension that held the rescued prisoners and guards was in chaos. Over 3,000 beings from dozens of different species found themselves in a space that defied physics, surrounded by swirling colors and impossible geometries. The guards were trying to maintain order while the prisoners struggled to understand what had happened to them. But Marcus noticed something remarkable happening. Without conscious effort, the 4 bridge builders were working together to calm the situation. Elena was naturally gravitating toward the younger inmates, her teacher instincts helping them process the trauma. Dr. Chen was explaining the scientific impossibilities they were witnessing in ways that different species could understand. Jacob was organizing groups of prisoners and guards to work together on practical problems like food distribution, and sleeping arrangements. And Marcus found himself moving between all the groups, sensing emotional stress and helping to ease conflicts before they erupted into violence. "Look at what you're doing," Keithmore observed, his massive form coiled at the center of their refuge. 4 untrained bridge builders, working instinctively to create harmony among 3,000 frightened beings from 47 different species. "This is why your kind was so valued in the ancient days." Through the dimensional windows they could watch the Devourers consuming star systems with terrifying efficiency. The shadow entities moved through space like a cosmic plague, leaving empty void where thriving worlds had been just moments before. "How long before they reached the core systems?" Marcus asked. "Days, perhaps hours," Keithmore replied grimly. "They move faster as they consume more matter and energy. Each destroyed world makes them stronger." Dr. Chen looked up from her impromptu laboratory where she was trying to analyze the Devourer phenomenon. "I've been studying the sensor data from the prison's destruction. These entities don't just consume matter, they consume the connections between things. The quantum entanglement that holds atoms together, the gravitational bonds that hold systems together, even the social bonds that hold communities together, which explains why unity is so effective against them," Elena said thoughtfully. She was sitting with a mixed group of young inmates, helping them process their fear through collaborative art projects. Strong connections resist their influence. Jakob approached their impromptu council meeting, his weathered face serious. "I've been talking to the prisoners from the Outer Rim systems. They have stories about worlds that survived Devourer attacks, not by fighting them, but by achieving perfect unity among all inhabitants. When every living being on a planet truly works together, the world becomes too coherent for the Devourers to unmake." Marcus felt a spark of hope. So it can be done. But how do we achieve that kind of unity across an entire galaxy? "The same way we've achieved it here," Keithmore said, gesturing around their refugee camp. "One connection at a time, one bridge at a time. But we need more bridge builders, and we need them working on every populated world simultaneously." Elena looked up from her art therapy session. "What if we don't need more bridge builders? What if we can teach others to do what we do?" "The gift is genetic," Dr. Chen protested. "You can't just learn to perceive emotional connections across species barriers." "Maybe not the full ability," Elena conceded, "but the principles can be taught. I've seen it in my classroom. Children who don't have the gift can still learn to empathize with classmates from other species if they're shown how." Jakob nodded enthusiastically. "She's right. Most of my organizing success came from teaching workers to see past their surface differences. I couldn't give them bridge builder perception, but I could show them how to find common ground." Marcus felt the idea crystallizing in his mind. "We become teachers. We go to as many worlds as possible and show people how to build the connections they need to resist the Devourers." "But there are thousands of inhabited systems," Dr. Chen pointed out. "Even if we split up, we could never reach them all in time." That's when the most unexpected voice joined their conversation. Warden Kexthai, the stern Kethnari who had run Sigma 9, approached their group. His reptilian features showed the stress of the recent events, but also something that looked like newfound understanding. "I couldn't help overhearing," he said in accented standard. "This unity you speak of, I've seen it in action. What Reeves did in my prison. What you've all done here with the refugees. It works." Marcus sensed the warden's genuine conversion from skeptic to believer. "You want to help?" "I want to save my species and everyone else's," Kexthai replied firmly. "I have contacts throughout the prison system, connections to law enforcement on hundreds of worlds. If you can teach me these bridge-building principles, I can spread them through official channels." Elena clapped her hands together excitedly. "That's it. We don't just teach random people. We teach the people who already have influence and connections. Teachers, administrators, community leaders, religious figures. Multiplier effect," Dr. Chen said, her scientific mind engaging with the concept. "Train a teacher and they can train dozens of others. Train an administrator and they can change policies that affect thousands." Jakob was already making lists in his head. Union leaders, corporate managers, diplomatic staff, military officers, anyone whose job involves coordinating groups of people. Keithmore's satisfaction radiated through the pocket dimension. "Now you begin to think like true bridge builders. Not just making connections yourselves, but teaching others to make connections." The plan that emerged over the next few hours was ambitious beyond anything Marcus had ever imagined. They would split into teams, each accompanied by volunteers from their refugee population who could serve as living examples of interspecies cooperation. Elena would focus on educational systems, Jacob on labor organizations, Dr. Chen on scientific communities, and Marcus would work with agricultural and service communities, the everyday people who kept civilizations running. Kethmore would provide transportation and protection, while other dragons would emerge from their long exile to help coordinate the effort across the galaxy. "There's something else," Marcus said as they finalized their plans. "We can't just teach people to cooperate. We need to give them hope. They need to see that the Devourers can be stopped." Through the dimensional windows, they watched another star system flicker and die, consumed by the expanding shadow. The sight filled Marcus with determination rather than despair. This was what he had been born to do, not just to tend mechanical horses in a backwater stable, but to help save the galaxy itself. Elena stood up from her group of young refugees, her face shining with purpose. "Then let's get started. We have a galaxy to unite." As Kethmore began opening dimensional portals to their target worlds, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here. A week ago, he had been a simple stable boy. Now he was part of something that would determine the fate of trillions of lives. The mechanical horses he had once tended seemed like a lifetime ago, but he realized they had been perfect training for this moment. Caring for artificial creatures had taught him patience, gentleness, and attention to the needs of others. Those same qualities would now help him teach entire worlds to work together. The Devourers were vast and terrible, but they faced something they had never encountered before. A galaxy united by the ancient human gift for building bridges between different peoples. Marcus stepped through the portal to his first target world, ready to prove that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the simple ability to help others understand each other. The stable boy had become something greater, and through him and his fellow bridge builders, humanity would fulfill its oldest destiny, bringing harmony to the stars.